I want to thank all of you for coming here today. I know it's a very busy morning here in Harrisburg. This is a very important issue, and again, thank you for taking your time. As you know, we have many good schools in the Commonwealth, and we have many very good teachers. However, each one of us knows that public education is not working as well as it could. Philadelphia is one glaring example. An article in a national newspaper last week claimed that only 40% of Philadelphia students scored proficient or above in reading. The problem is widespread, extending well beyond our urban schools, however. In 2009, the Program for International Student Assessment ranked U.S. students 17th in the world in reading, 23rd in science, and 31st in math. These problems affect all of us, parents, students, and teachers. Too many students are not in a position to compete with students from around the world. Personally, I hear from university instructors and from employers that our students are not prepared for college and not prepared to join the workforce. The public's continuing concern regarding educational achievement is understandable and justified. Add to this financial concerns arising from high pension costs and high property taxes, and you have all the elements of a grassroots rebellion. So what are the solutions? How can we reform our failing schools and make our good schools even better? Unfortunately, there are no magic bullets. There are no simple solutions. Many of the problems we see in public education are cultural and social. Many relate to the breakdown of the family and to the prevalence of drug and alcohol addiction. However, I think we can all agree that the solution is not to cut programs like foreign languages, music, or arts, or to furlough some of our best, brightest, most productive young teachers. But that is exactly what present law does. By limiting school boards facing budgetary hardships from making reductions in staffing except upon substantial decreases in student enrollment, or by curtailing educational programs. Compounding the problem, when reductions in staffing are required and are made, they must be made without regard to the effectiveness of the teacher. House Bill 1722 seeks to remedy these shortcomings by allowing for furlough of professional employees for economic reasons, and by directing that such furloughs be based upon performance evaluations. If we want to make our schools better, we must allow local school boards to keep programs that are working and to keep outstanding teachers, teachers that are getting results. The children of Pennsylvania deserve the best education we can provide. To do that, we need to allow local school boards to keep our best teachers. House Bill 1722 is a good start. It will allow our local school boards to keep great teachers, and by doing so, to build better schools. I'm very pleased to announce that our Democratic co-sponsor is Vanessa Brown. She has a lot of experience and understanding of the situation in Philadelphia. Unfortunately, she was tied up and could not be here on time this morning. We do have, however, Alex Helper from the PA Chamber that will speak a few words. Dominique DeArmond is a Philadelphia teacher that has a personal experience to relate, and Jonathan Sattel from Pennsylvania Campaign for Achievement Now is also here, and they'll each speak in turn.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to be here today to share my personal story with you. My name is Dominique DeArmond, and since I arrived in Philadelphia about 10 years ago, I've been lucky enough to work in education and to work with some of the most amazing young people you could imagine. I was at my luckiest for 4 of those years when I was able to be a teacher in the school district of Philadelphia. Unfortunately, I'm not any longer, and I want to share a little bit more with you all today about why. I first began teaching in 2007, the fall immediately after graduating from the University of Pennsylvania, which initially brought me to Philadelphia. I began my career with the school district as an 8th grade science teacher in West Philadelphia, where I spent my first 3 years. I loved the students and staff that I worked with, and I was inspired by the vigor that they brought to teaching and learning. At the same time, I came to see some of the challenges that faced our school and that ultimately became obstacles for my students as they pursued their ultimate academic and life goals. So, when at the end of my 3rd year of teaching, I saw an opportunity open up at a district turnaround school through a program known as Promise Academies, it greatly appealed to me. One of the key strategies in this model was that principals were allowed to select their own staff based on the needs of their school. So I went through a rigorous interview process with the principal of that school, and I was thrilled to be hired, along with many other talented teachers who were willing to go the extra mile. Many of those teachers were even younger than I was at the time. We were unified in our charge to show the community what our students were truly capable of. That year, my colleagues and I were able to do some incredible things to support our students. We coached sports, started clubs, led after-school tutoring sessions, created peer mentorship programs, secured volunteer student tutors from the University of Pennsylvania to provide SAT support, and so much more that I'm probably forgetting now. Ultimately, especially in the 9th grade academy where I worked, we created a supportive and demanding culture which would prepare our students to succeed. The potential I saw for student achievement in this environment was inspiring, and maybe that's why it was during that year I realized I had an interest in someday becoming a school leader. I talked to my principal about this aspiration, and ultimately he decided to make me an academy leader the following year as a first step on a career path to become a principal. Excitedly, I began to make plans for the great work I would do with my colleagues in this new context. But that stopped when the first round of layoffs came, because many of my teachers were left without a job, especially those in the 9th grade academy, where we had made such great gains. As I watched my colleagues lose their positions, and my lofty plans began to fade away, I started to think really hard about the impact I could have for my students in a context where new teachers were treated in this way. I knew I could not work alone to provide my students with the education they truly deserved in a system where some of the hardest working, most talented teachers were being laid off just because they'd taught for less than 3 years. I needed those teachers who had been laid off, some of whom were award winners within our building, in order to build the academy that our students really deserved. So I left the path to school leadership in the District of Philadelphia, but I still think back on it all the time. I think back on my laid-off colleagues who worked relentlessly to make enormous gains with their students, only to have their efforts thwarted by a system that ignores their success. I think about the veteran teachers who stayed behind and how difficult it must have been for them to see their colleagues being treated in such a way while they were expected to pick up the scraps and start again. I think about one of my colleagues in particular who was so committed to our school community that she was laid off and called back multiple times before eventually giving up and moving to another city entirely to teach. I think about my own path and where I may have been and what I might be doing now if this hadn't happened to me in the district system. And lastly, but most importantly, I think about my students. I worked really hard to inspire them about what was possible through hard work and what they could be capable of, only at the end of the year to have no answers for them when they asked why their hardworking, talented teachers were losing their jobs. And so as I reflect back on this experience and on all these people who I think of a few things. Seniority does not define whether a teacher is good or bad. I worked with incredible longtime teachers who were some of my critical mentors. And I also worked with energetic and impassioned young teachers who are a critical part of our school community. I also hope that you hear that educating our nation's youth within the current system is a complicated endeavor, and simplifying it to something like seniority would be irresponsible. But teacher talent and how we treat them is a critical element to solving the issues in education. Finally, I hope through all of this you realize that what's most important is our students. They deserve, for me and for us, to do whatever is necessary to keep the best teachers in their classrooms teaching them. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning. My name is Alex Halper. I'm Director of Government Affairs at the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. The Pennsylvania Chamber is the largest broad-based business advocacy association in Pennsylvania. We represent employers in all industries and all sizes in every region of the state. And our members care deeply about the success of public schools in Pennsylvania, because clearly the students of today are the employees and the workers and the business owners of tomorrow. So we know that it's critical that students have a quality education. And unfortunately, we're finding through input from our members that oftentimes they're having difficulty finding applicants for open jobs and finding individuals in the workforce that have the education and the skills necessary to fill those open positions. This past April, we conducted a survey of about 500 of our members, again in multiple industries and regions and sizes. And among the questions that we asked these companies, these employers, was how difficult is finding employees with the right education, training, or skills to fill the workforce needs of your company. And we found that almost a third of the respondents indicated that it was extremely or very difficult to find these employees. 40% said somewhat difficult, and about a fourth or so said that there was little difficulty. So clearly something has to be done to improve the outcomes of students in Pennsylvania so that they are prepared for college and career. We also hear from our members who care deeply about the school districts in their own areas and in their counties and municipalities. Now, we understand that school districts can't run like a business in every respect, but there are certain principles of best business practices that can be applied at the school district level, and I think part of that is giving managers and giving the leaders of the school the discretion to implement policies that they see as the most effective and the best to achieve the goals of public education, which is the best outcomes and the best achievement of students. And unfortunately, we have policies in place that really handcuff these school leaders and policies that are not based on student achievement and unfortunately are based on other issues that are not about giving Pennsylvania's youth the best opportunity to have a quality education and be prepared for the next step in their life, whether it's higher education, a career, military, or any other decision that they make. We applaud the representatives for introducing this legislation, which we support. We look forward to working with Representative Krieger, Representative Brown, Penn-Can, and others to see this legislation move forward. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Brandon Flood. I am the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus. First and foremost, allow me to qualify my presence here today. I will be here on behalf of Representative Vanessa Lowry Brown. However, her views, and she wants to make this explicitly clear, her views do not reflect that of the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus. Regrettably, Representative Vanessa Brown was not able to make it here today. She had prior obligations, but one of the few things that she wanted me to emphasize today, especially as it relates to her support of this measure, is because she feels that performance definitely should take priority over experience or seniority. Seniority does not, in all cases, translate into effectiveness or experience. She personally has undergone a situation which really hits close to home for her. She has a child, a special needs child, who during his high school years, she witnessed that the quality of education that he received from some of the folks, some of the teachers that were more tenured, wasn't effective. She ended up moving her son to another school where they had dynamic teachers and folks that were engaged in the process, and she's seen a significant increase in his learning and and the effectiveness of the education he received. So this is chiefly why she has signed on to this bill. Also, she feels that performance performance is the best metric for measuring how effective our educators are. She feels that by making performance that quantifying element, that it forces teachers, especially those that have been the longer tenured teachers, to not become complacent, to become active, to put their money where their mouths are, so to speak. So she asked me to communicate this. She feels deeply about this and feels deeply that performance, but by basing teachers being furloughed and brought back on based upon performance will be a win-win for everyone. So as I said, I'm communicating this on behalf of State Representative Vanessa Lai Brown, and she thanks Representative Krieger for bringing her to the table. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative Krieger, Representative Brown, and the 21 additional co-sponsors from both sides of the aisle who are co-sponsors of the Protect Excellent Teachers Act. My name is Jonathan Sattel, and I'm currently the founding executive director of PennCan, the Pennsylvania Campaign for Achievement Now. PennCan is a statewide advocacy organization with the mission of accelerating the pace of education reforms so that all students have access to the quality education they deserve. I'm here on behalf of Representative PennCan, but also as part of a broader coalition, which includes the Pennsylvania Chamber of Commerce, Team PA, the Commonwealth Foundation, Teach for America, TNTP, the Philadelphia School Partnership, the Philadelphia Education Fund, Students First, and A+ Schools. And the point of listing that whole coalition is to show there's a broad base of support for this issue. My interest, though, personally in this issue come from my experience as a teacher. I taught middle school reading and social studies in a low-income school in North Philadelphia. My colleagues were dedicated professionals struggling to be successful in a very challenging environment. But one teacher stood out above the rest. As a first-year teacher, he had this confident air about him, truly believing that he was going to transform our science department into this laboratory of innovation and get students doing these really hands-on tasks. And as a teacher with a little bit more experience, I was admittedly skeptical of his confidence. And sure enough, in the beginning, like all first-year teachers, he struggled. But sure enough, he morphed into one of the best teachers I've ever had the pleasure to work with by coming in a little earlier than the rest of us, staying a little longer, and using all of his natural-born gifts as someone with just this magnetic ability to inspire and connect with his students. After some time, he became, without question, and his colleagues agreed, the best teacher in our school. The sad truth is that our school that year was forced to have done layoffs, and it just needed to lay off one teacher, it would have been him. And a few years later, that's exactly what happened. After a big round of layoffs, he was cut. Where is he today? He now runs the science department at one of the highest performing charter schools in the city. So we know that there are incredible educators and innovators doing wonderful things day in and day out to narrow the achievement gap and to build our next generation of leaders. But far too often, these individuals are succeeding in spite of and not because of policies that are coming out of this building. So that's why I helped found PennCan, because we believe that with the right policies, dramatic change is possible. We seek to identify those barriers holding schools back and remove them so that the Herculean task of running an incredible school can become just a little easier. Right now, when districts lay teachers off, they are mandated to use one simple measure: the number of years a teacher has in the classroom. And as we've heard today from teachers like Dominique, that forces the system to let go of some of the best teachers. And imagine, I like to use this analogy, that imagine a sports team that had to let go of its star rookies, or a business that couldn't use the performance data to inform any of their staffing decisions. That doesn't make sense in sports or business, and yet for some reason we think it's a viable way to make staffing decisions in public education. One other thing I'd like to add is that we see this as a very pro-teacher bill. We did a poll back in June that showed statewide a vast majority of Pennsylvanians support this, and even if you poll Pennsylvanians in teachers union household, it's still around more than 3/4 of teachers support this action. And so the hard truth is that these stories that you've heard today are not unique. And it's a reality happening in the 500 districts throughout the Commonwealth. So that's why I'm committed to working with Representative Krieger, Representative Brown, and with all the lawmakers to help make sure that we get this Protect Excellent Teachers Act done and passed. Thank you.
Well, thank you to our speakers. Do we have any questions? Yes.
How many Democratic co-sponsors do you have?
I think we have 3 at this point. Is that correct?
And this is not new. This has been an effort that's been tried in previous sessions, right?
I've been involved just this session. Certainly the idea's been around.
Yeah, and so again, the question is always, why do you think now things will be any different?
Well,
if you do?
I mean, I think if you take a look at what we have here, we have a broad spectrum. You have the left, right, and center. I don't know if that happened before. I think it indicates that we all understand, and I think if you talk to PSEA, we all understand schools could be better. There may be disagreement in some cases about how to achieve that, but I think the fact that you have folks on the left, right, and center now looking at it, and particularly with Philadelphia, and some of the issues coming to the forefront there, I think perhaps emphasized now as particularly the issues with the School Reform Commission there, and seniority is an issue there. It certainly doesn't cross over to the state exactly, but the same principles are involved. So I think right now perhaps is a better time because of what we see happening in Philadelphia. Yes?
Under what specific circumstances would this allow school districts to furlough teachers?
The bill indicates for economic reasons. Now, the school boards would have to make that decision, and we think that they're the best position to do that. The alternative would be somehow we figure out a formula, and we can't figure out a formula that's going to work for 500 separate school districts. So the school boards would make that determination.
So if the board determined that there was an economic need, then
Yes.
they would go ahead.
Yes, and of course, going forward, given what we're seeing with pensions and some of the spikes that are coming, I think we're all going to know in our separate school districts when our schools are in trouble, and many of them are approaching that now.
And would this make performance the sole criteria?
It would make performance the primary criteria. I mean, let's give an example. Let's say we have 2 high school French teachers, and we only need 1 because based upon economic circumstances, there has to be some cut. Performance evaluations would be looked at. Now, if perchance both performance evaluations were identical, then we would look to seniority secondarily. Now, whether in reality that's going to happen very often is probably not the case. But so seniority would be at least a piece of that if everything else is equal.
And so that is the state formula for performance that was
That's correct.
into law.
That's correct.
Okay.
Anyone else? Well, thank you all for coming.